So that was Frankie, and then shortly after that is Maya. So Maya and I, back when my hair was mostly brown and a lot shorter. So really, my involvement with the K9 unit started in '09 when I took the quarry course, and then I continued to quarry throughout my time in 2010 and so on while I was in District 6, both in General Patrol and in CSU in District 6. And I was lucky enough to earn the spot in CSU because of the proactive work and the productive work that I did while in General Patrol in District 6. And really, even though, as most cops know, regardless of where you are, suburbs are typically larger districts or divisions, quieter areas in terms of crime and calls for service. And sometimes that can breed a less motivated cop or somebody who's pretty fucking lazy. And all too often, services erroneously use that as a dumping ground for people who can't hack it in busier divisions. I kind of understand why, but at the same time, you're not doing the service or that person justice in their development. So I continued the type of proactive post-organized crime and vice kind of work whenever I wasn't acting as a street supervisor in 6, because I was senior guy on the shift again, and working for a friend and getting that experience, although I never really had anything too hectically crazy in terms of critical incidents or what have you while I was acting. But it was fantastic. So yeah, use the time, use the size of the district to take your time when it's quiet, not to hide or just issue tags, but use it to drive around and find out where the fucking honey holes are. If you're particularly interested in gang members or drug dealers, which are kind of the same beast most of the time, find out where they do business, because like us, they're not just working out of an office or a house. They're out there on the street in their mobile offices and their cars and their cell phones, and so you find the places where deals happen just by driving around and paying attention and observing, not surveillance, but running plates and hunting for assholes. And I was certainly able to get my fair share of, it was mostly weed dealers, but I was shocked how in the Charleswood and River Heights area, I ran into numerous pound level weed dealers and got a handful of arrests in the year that I was in GP in District 6. And that allowed me to gain intel and figure out kind of what the play was. And then I also had a few crack cocaine and powder cocaine dealer arrests, and I was getting them several times a month, not every week or every day, but when I had the opportunity, I went out and looked, and not too many other cops, at least on my working side, were really into that. But I knew that I needed to do that to keep up my desire to either be the next drug dog handler or perhaps return to Division 40 in some capacity, because even though I'd been there and had the experience and had the courses, back in uniform and thinking about transfer opportunities down the road means back to fucking earning it, putting your name out there. Even though I was fairly well known as a hardworking street cop, I knew that if I wanted to go back there, I had to reprove myself all over again. That's just the attitude that I carried. It doesn't mean that I was some sort of straight god or anything like that, but it just means that I was conscious of what it took when it came to competing for positions in specialty units. So being able to, bring Maya along with me was a fantastic um, blessing to have with me. So she wasn't just sitting at home when I was at work, because of course, I could also take the time to run her, throw the chucket and stuff, um, keep her busy, and do a lot of quarrying on my days off or overlap days or what have you. And things were looking good for the future down the road because I was continuing the work that it took to get somewhere. And the more and more I thought about it, the more my career was sort of pointed in that direction. I had taken all the right, for a drug dog handler, that is. I had taken all the right courses, and I was keeping up with the work and submitting intels and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to be better, not a better cop, but I wanted to have more points in the competition when the time came. And that included getting a position in District 6 CSU, where I had even a little bit more freedom to do that kind of work. I got to work with an old DS or detective sergeant that was on my shift in organized crime, who's just the happiest go lucky motherfucker there is, and the kind of guy who could walk around a building, bang his head into a stop sign, and all of a sudden 2 kilos of cocaine would fall from the sky. He was, Buck was just that kind of guy, and I was fortunate to work with him. I also got to work with an old shiftmate from District 3, and a great fellow for whom I relied upon for union advice and just for being an old school street cop. And it was great to be around a guy like that because he wasn't just a sounding board for political shit on the job, but he was a solid, dependable dude who didn't mince words, and that's a rare quality, I think. Even more so nowadays. That was back in like 2010 and so on and so forth. And I also had the chance. My supervisors in CSU did change at one point, and I had the chance to work with someone who was sort of a different S2 or patrol sergeant that I'd ever worked for before. Very much investigative, cerebral kind of guy who had experience in other units like child abuse. Really, stuff that I knew nothing about, had no background in. And while we were very different cops, I respected his demeanor and his ability to. You just respected the guy because of how he treated you and how he was as a supervisor, not because of the stripes on his shoulder, but because of not just how he conducted himself. And so that was great. And all those people were, including the divisional commanders at the time, were all very aware of my goal to get into the K9 unit, and they facilitated a lot of things, allowing me to, on overlaps, work with the current drug dog handler to gain that experience, an idea that I had, and one of the key phrases that involved that was like succession planning. I didn't think of it that way, but I just thought, well, if I am going to be doing that kind of work, what better thing to do than to work with a guy currently doing it? And that's how you gain experience. That's how you learn. And, you open yourself up to a whole new world of policing, and not just regular policing, but also a different way of drug investigations. K9 work, specifically drug dog handler and interdiction work, is at the opposite end of the spectrum of traditional drug investigations. And it can be very effective. It's very different. It's very difficult. it relies on a lot more initiative and learning, and so I didn't just set about the practical street aspects of that kind of work. I also read a ton of fucking case law, which is dry as fuck. And but anybody who wants to learn about a certain type of investigations or a type of work, it's reading case law. There's hardly a better thing, because then you understand what the goal of moving forward in the courts is at the final stage of an investigation, and it really helps guide how you um, act while you're out on the street, the things that you say, the things that you look for, um, how you build a case in terms of notation, recording, and all that kind of stuff. And I read every single bit of detector dog case law I could get my hands on, and that was one more thing, more than what I was aware of that other candidates were doing. Um, on top of that, I also went to court on my days off for matters that I was not involved in, so not getting paid, and going and watching interdiction guys, including our current handler and some RCMP members, watching their court cases. So to see what it was like in court, to see how they articulated themselves. And, all that was just, I was just loving it. I was learning so much, and I felt confident and positive about what, how things would go. Um, in my mind, nobody's gonna fucking beat me. Not because I'm great, but because I was determined to do more. And as it turns out, it served me very well. I was very fortunate when, a little sooner than spring transfers, after I'd been in D6 CSU, that I was rewarded with the position of drug dog handler. And not only that, it was fantastic getting that fucking phone call after putting my name in for the competition. And even though a lot of people in the unit and outside of the unit felt that the writing was on the wall, I never took anything for granted, because you can't. Don't ever do that. It's great to rely on things and to get your hopes up, but never take it for granted, because in our fucking world, anything can happen. People can stab you in the back, politics can be involved, units can pick people that are easier to manage, which certainly happened within the K9 unit, and I'll get to that later. But so I started a little bit early to do my detector dog training. And, one thing that was fantastic about that was the ability to really, really see, which I hadn't yet before, how a trainer doesn't just train the guy or the gal or the dog, but the team of those two, the combination of those two beings, dog and handler, together. And there's a lot to it, a lot that I wasn't aware of despite my months of quarrying. And when I quarried, I didn't just quarry with Maya as a drug dog, or with the drug dog handler, or with the supervisors of the unit teaching me in that. I quarried as all other quarries would do, for the general purpose dogs, the dogs that track and apprehend, laying tracks, and doing all the shit fucking jobs of earning your way into a unit. Literally cleaning the shit out of the dog kennels, washing the cruiser cars, setting stuff up, and doing all those things that you have to do that no fucking person is above doing, no matter what. Because there were certainly some people who grumbled about the crappier jobs than others, and that's what you do. I mean, when you're in that position as a quarry, or someone looking into getting into a specialty unit, you don't complain. You do all the jobs over and over and over again, because why would they take you if you didn't? And so for me, not doing just the drug dog handler stuff and doing all the other general handler stuff, such as laying tracks and taking bites, uh, and all that kind of thing, and doing some role playing and whatnot. You've got to know, it's just like a hockey team. And I don't often use that example because in our world, being part of a hockey team um, so often provides people with too much comfort in terms of when they build a team. And it's not something that you should hire somebody based on solely just because you know them or they're a good hockey player, which some people equate to being a good guy, which is not at all the case. Don't get me wrong. I played hockey for 17 years. I worked with a lot of hockey guys who played at higher levels, way higher levels than I did, and they're great dudes. All I'm saying is that that should not be simply a reason for picking someone. But anyway, so I did all those jobs because my thinking was I need to know the job, the responsibility of everybody else that's in the same unit as me. I have to be familiar with the work that they did and understand the who's, how's, when, what, and why, to know what their work was like. And for me, that was partially to have that knowledge base and to understand the guys and gals and the work that they did. And so then when I left 6, I was part of Division 50, the K9 unit, and Maya and I went into our training course, which was 8 weeks, which was different than from what other departments in Canada were doing. I believe that the national standard that's measured is what the RCMP use, and I believe their program is 10 weeks. But we did not do that in my case. But so what that consisted of is, everything from learning footwork, which I was fucking horrible at, walking your dog or leading your dog on a leash to drug hides, being careful not to give any visual or auditory cues as to where the hide is, because of course sometimes as a handler you know it, sometimes you don't, but what you don't want to do is any physical action or sound that tips the dog off to where the hide is. You want them to make the decision as to where the hide is on their own, by discovering the odor themselves. And I have 2 left feet. I didn't just have 2 left feet. I still have 2 left feet. But you gotta laugh at shit like that because it's funny, and but the way that you overcome that, or at least get better at controlling it, is hundreds and hundreds of reps. And very simply, my unit supervisor would introduce the odor to the dog, and we had samples of all kinds of drugs from Health Canada, and then would hide it without the dog seeing where it was hidden, and then I would put the dog into a sit, and then take the dog, guide the dog or lead the dog, making sure that Maya put her nose, and when you're using drug boxes, wooden square boxes with a hole in the center, and you put several of them throughout a room, and you would take her not directly to the source of the odor, but you would take her through every box until she recognized it. And then when she recognized the odor, you give the sit command. And once she started to recognize where the odor was and sit on her own. Whenever she found the odor, you rewarded her by throwing her the ball. Which is, if it isn't food reward, it's ball or a toy reward, a Kong or a tug of some sort, so that the dog starts to learn, holy shit, I recognize this odor and I get a toy. And so they're, reward motivated. And it's just beautiful to watch that process come along. And fuck, did she learn fast. She was the brains and beauty in our partnership. And I was just the dumb guy at the end of the leash. But it was amazing to watch her work. Not motivated by money, not motivated by outshining others, but simply motivated by the reward and driven to fucking move. Even though, of course, as a drug dog handler, you don't run after drugs or bad guys, which is good because I hate running and I'm not terribly good at it. As some former partners can attest in terms of foot pursuit records for who wins. But I was interested in continuing my hunt for drug dealers with the best tool that there is, in my opinion, is a trained dog. And so those 8 weeks consisted of both as many different indoor and outdoor environments as possible, so that the variation of surfaces that she was comfortable working on, the variation of places, different distractions, different odors. And so, we wouldn't just go to police buildings or parking lots and hide the drugs in vehicles, both on the outside and on the inside of the vehicle. And, it's such a simple thing, but it's so fucking amazing to watch a dog work their nose along the outdoor seam of a vehicle, on the outside of a vehicle, recognize an odor, indicate, and then the drugs are somewhere inside of the vehicle. And I loved it to no end. And I just thought this was so fucking cool. And I can't wait to get out there on the street. And eventually we would do that. And so I think I'll keep going a little bit longer. Okay. Hopefully I'm not boring you guys. But so we did that for 8 weeks, going to the airport, going to the bus depot, going to different courier companies, just working in as many different situations, where I would eventually be working once we were validated and out on the street. And I won't give too many details about the validation process, but you have to have a certified trainer, which my supervisor was, training a handler and dog. And you just have, I don't know how many, but again, like hundreds of drug hides that you do during that 8-week period, many of them over the day, working on the dog's endurance, working on her recognizing all different odors in her agenda. And I think at the time I had, when I was handling her, had 9, and I'll talk about that all later. But eventually after all that time, one day during the 8th week, I did my last drug hide, and she and I were validated. So that was just like, it was like graduation. We were ready to hit the fucking road. And when I did my last drug hide and all the validation reports were done, it was just like, congratulations to me. And we headed into the station. It was near the end of the day, and that was such a sense of accomplishment, because it was a lot of hard work and tenacity on both our parts. I was, oh man, just raring to go, and that was a wonderful feeling. So yeah, we'll leave it here. Now we're done, and as many people know, there was a lot going on in the canine unit at that time, which I'll get into later. A lot of political controversy and stuff. So in my time working there, there was really both good and bad, and a lot of fucking bad. And it was the best job I ever had in my life, with the best partner I've ever had in my life. No offense to human partners that I've had, but it was also the worst fucking environment that I've ever worked in terms of well, just the workplace, in terms of all the bullshit that went on, mistreatment of people, and other things that I'll get into later. But like I said, there was good and bad, and it is important for me to talk about and remember both. So I'll say goodbye for today, and once again, remember to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, enjoy your days off, family first, and love you guys, and we'll see you next week for what'll be the second of probably 3 to 4 different episodes on My Time in Canine. Bye, guys.